Just make sure that OG thing, the O changes, and so stay away from OGs in the end of words because it just messes things up for the kids. I was gonna say we could do thrill, but no. Bill, good. And you know what? We can make it a name so they can practice capitalizing names. That's a good one.
Thick.
Thick. One more.
Sass.
They've all heard that one, haven't they? Sass. Okay, there are 12. That'll do for our purposes today.
Are there two S's at the end of sass? Or is it just S?
There's two.
It didn't look right, but it's Saturday.
And if you put a Y on it, it's sassy.
Okay.
You want the Y? Yes.
No,
No?
because we haven't taught
Oh.
that the Y says E. We haven't taught that, so we can't put it there yet. Okay, so the auditory, we've done the auditory drill, sounds. Now the spelling, words to spell, you're gonna say the word. Then you want the student to say the word to make sure, and I always say, watch my mouth. Especially when you're getting into THs and Fs and Vs, you know, things that they can mishear. And many of our struggling readers are auditorily challenged, and so you want to be careful and make sure that they're watching your mouth. So you're going to say the word, and then the student's going to say the word, then the student finger spells the word, and if I'm in a small group or a whole classroom, I will finger spell it on the board with them. That's, you know, obviously up to you and if you have time. So, and then he sounds as he writes. So you can do finger spelling, like the word chug, ch, g. And then have, as he's writing, ch, ch, u, g, g. And then he reads the word, chug. So let's do shell together. Watch my mouth. Shell. You say the word? Good job. Let's finger spell. Sh, o. Good job. Let's write it. Sh. And you would write sh, or the student would write sh. Student would write e. O. Student would write l. What's the word? Shell. So they've heard. I mean, think about that. How much they've heard the word, spelling of the word, and they've actually put it on their fingers. So that's the process for the words to spell. Now, if they misspell the word, for instance, this could be shell. I mean ill, shill. So you want to say what you spelled is shill. The word is shell. Repeat it. Shell. Excuse me. Finger spell, and then you would ask them to do it again, and then you would say, point to the actual problem, and ask for the sound in the letter, and then have him write it again, or her write it again. And that correction is right here, so you have no problems there. If it's a rule, like for instance, if they wrote BAK, then I would point and I would just say, okay, back. Do you hear a short vowel? Yes, I do. How do we spell k after a short vowel? What's that rule? And then hopefully they would know what to do and just change it. And I always encourage my kids and say, you know what? That's just life. We all make mistakes. Every single one of us makes mistakes. The real true value is that if we can correct our own mistakes, then that makes us be in a really good place. So, and that's what we're learning here, is just the rules to help us correct any mistakes that we might make. So that's the auditory drill. The review for the phoneme grapheme, you probably won't have time to do that. It's pretty self-explanatory. I would not use that unless it is something that your small group or your individual student is struggling with. If they just have had such a hard time getting it in, then take another opportunity to review it with words to read and to spell. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the introduction of a new phoneme grapheme. And today, we're going to teach the next thing in our word list. Next thing in our word list is DGE. Do you see where I found that? Last thing we taught was CK. Now we're moving over to DGE. So you're going to write that at the top of this little line up here where it says introduction of a new phoneme grapheme. You're going to write -DGE. Okay. We talked about, the last time we did the lesson plan, we talked about the procedures for the lesson plan, and those are right here. Essentially, you want to see them, you want them to see it, you want them to say it, you want them to somehow or another involve their bodies, their fingers in it, and you want them to have words to read and words to spell, and that's pretty much what that says. So, the first thing that we're going to do is that we show the card. But before we do that, let's get words to read and words to spell, and then we'll go through the procedure. So, words to read. We're going to look at the DGE, and you can see that there's not a whole bunch of them. So words to read, we're going to try to get words that are a little bit more difficult than the words that we're going to spell. And I like what Shirley does, she goes after the different vowels. So, and you can see how we're limited here.
So if we start at the bottom of the list.
Right.
That's required.
So we can do that. There's sledge. Move up to bridge. So then we have a short E and a short I. Excuse me. Grudge. Then we have a short U. Hedge. We have a short E. Lodge. Short O. And badge, we have a short A. Does that give us 5?
I've got 6.
I've got
Okay.
6.
Okay, good. Let's get a few more. Let's get at least 10. So let's go back to dredge. Smudge. Wedge. Judge.
So when we select words, are we trying to get words that add new vocabulary? Because fudge, they would probably know over judge. And dredge, I don't know that, but do we want to introduce a vocabulary, or should we pick words we think they would use in their daily?
I don't think so. I think you could, whatever is convenient for you.
Okay.
And I wouldn't teach vocabulary while you're teaching DGE, just because you want the focus to be on DGE. And then that's true, not having enough time. So, yeah, so I would do that. That doesn't mean that at another time you could talk about it walking down the hallway, do you know what dredge means? Have you, that kind of thing I think is, can be an aside. And I think our kids really like that. Jack is the master of telling stories to the kids when he's teaching them something new. And they, it's funny, they just are it's like a storytelling history person. They're just fascinated with it, and they love to hear those stories. And it makes it stick in their brains. It's really pretty amazing. Okay, so let's go back down to words to spell, and we're gonna we're gonna pick like, let's see, with this one is kind of difficult. So let's pick, what did we didn't pick budge. Dodge. I don't remember what we did pick.
Do we have hedge?
We do have hedge. Do we have ledge? No. Okay, let's do ledge.
Grudge.
Okay, grudge. Any of those that we haven't, and pledge. I always like to get pledge in there because it's something with which they are familiar, and you know, you can easily, put your hand over your heart and easily demonstrate it. So.
We don't have an I, bridge.
Okay,
Do we have it?
bridge.
Oh, we had it up at the top.
How about ridge?
Bridge.
Okay, so we have our words to read and we have our words to spell. And then this is the process that you want to do. So the procedure's written right along here. Okay, so the first thing you want them to do is to see the card. So you're gonna present the card. And you're gonna say, when you see DGE, this says J. And with this little line, now all cards don't have these little lines, but if it has a line here, I always say, you know what this means? This means that there's other letters here. So that means this comes at the end. So DGE says J. DGE is at the end of a word, usually a short word, and it follows a short vowel. And then this is a perfect opportunity, since you taught CK already. You've already taught this rule. You've already taught the short rule. So it really works out that you can say, remember with a CK, we don't pronounce the first sound, and that it comes at the end of a word, and that it has a short vowel right in front of it. So this is another layer of the short vowel pointers. And so we are doing really good teaching by having something that we've already taught, and now we are laying on top of it that cumulative piece. We're just bringing it right back around and laying it on top, so that really helps our kids. So they have now seen it. DGE says J. We've told them the rule, and now we're going to have them trace it. So they can trace it on a piece of carpet. They can trace it on the little plastic thing that I showed you today. They can trace it on the table. They can trace it on anything, the gel packs that we talked about last week. So you can do, so now they're going to trace. And remember, every time they trace 3 times. So we're going to have them trace. Would you do that for me now? D-G-E spells J. D-G-E spells J. Or says D-G-E says J. Either one of those work. Okay, so now we're going to have the students going to read words. You have the words on your lesson plan. You don't want your kids to read off your lesson plan because 9 times out of 10 it's messy. It's probably not big enough. So you can have these words written on a board somewhere. You can have them written on a piece of paper somewhere. Oftentimes what I'll do is on a sheet of paper, I'll have review words here, the review words that they have to read in the visual drill. And over here I'll have the new words that they have to read. So then you can fold the paper and present it this way, so they're not visually overwhelmed. You do that however is best for you. One thing is, if you put it on paper and then you file it under DGE, then you will have it for the next class. If you put it on a board, which is very helpful because, it's very helpful because it's big and the kids see it and so forth. And you could actually do both. Or you could keep your lesson plans. And IPS, where I helped out, they had a file of lesson plans, so that they didn't have, no teacher had to repeat the wheel, to remake the wheel. They just went back to the DGE lesson plan or whatever. So maybe you want to do that. The problem with that is, obviously, then it becomes a curriculum as opposed to prescriptive and diagnostic. So if you're with an individual, you might go back and check words and stuff, but I'd be very careful about presenting the exact same lesson plan, because that student may be very different than the last one that you taught. And with the word list that Ron gives you, it's actually pretty simple to come up with those. Okay, so then you have, so number 3 is traced, and then you have the student read the words. So the words, again, is going to be on a board, or it's going to be on a paper that you present to them. Then the student still has their student response sheet that they wrote their sounds on. So they wrote their sounds on them, and they wrote their words to spell on them. So that's already the top part of the student response sheet. And then, so now they're going to write the words to spell for the new thing, the DGE. And you're going to do it exactly the same way. I give you the word to spell. What's the first word we're going to spell? Thank you. The first word we're going to spell is budge. You say the word? Budge. Let's finger spell the word. Budge. DGE is one sound that goes on one finger. Okay, so let's do it, and while they're doing it on their paper, especially for small group or large group, you're going to have them writing, and you're going to write on the board. Then when everybody's finished, they can do their self-check. Did you write on your paper what I have on the board? And then if they say, yes, I did, have them check. Because when you get those papers, when you get your artifacts, when you get your papers in at the end of the day or the week, you can see if they erased it. I mean, you'll know that they changed it if they changed it. And I don't go after children who do. I think it's wonderful that they thought to change it. So, and you would go through all of your words to spell that way. You say it, they say it, finger spell it, and then they sound and write. Right, right, right. Does your word look like my word? Okay. On a one-to-one, on a therapy basis, then you're just looking at them, usually across the table, so you'll know whether they did it or not. If they didn't do it, then you would correct, just like the corrections over here for words to spell. The corrections are the same. So in the auditory drill, words to spell, the corrections are down here, and that's exactly what you would correct here. This would be a rule correction, wouldn't it? So if somebody wrote, that makes sense, and it actually is phonetically correct, at least sound-wise it's correct. So I would say, you know what? Good choice, but what is you could do a couple things. What is our rule about J? Never comes at the end of an English word. Or, what do we write? What three letters do we write after a short vowel sound to make the sound J? And then hopefully that would bring up, and you probably want to point out, since that's what we're teaching, you would probably want to say, is this a short vowel? Yes, it is. What three letters spell J at the end of a short word after a short vowel? Okay, and then they hopefully would change it. So that would be that rule correction for DGE. Okay, and so then you want to make sure that all that information you plugged into their head, where does it go in a word, what does it follow in a word, how do we spell it, do we pronounce the D, anything that you've taught them, that's on the back of your card, or that we've talked about, then you would ask them to summarize that. So I will often hand a card to a kid and say, you teach me. And they will immediately freeze, and so then you just ask them leading questions, like, Okay, well, you know, what does it say? Oh, it says j, that's right, j. So then I would say j. And then I would say, if they get stuck again, then you just ask them leading questions. You probably should ask me where it comes in a word. Oh, where does it come in a word? It comes at the end of a word, that's right. Except, you know, you get it, you get the idea. So that's what I call the cognitive piece, because we want it to be in their cognition. And then, the very last thing is we have the kids do it 3 times again. They're gonna trace 3 times again. When you're having the kids trace, if they're little ones, tracing in the air is good. Tracing on the table or on a carpet, or like we went through. Older ones will wanna maybe do it on their leg. They probably won't do it in the air. If you, with the student response sheets that I showed you, you can actually write 3 lines on the student response sheet. So the final writing is that they actually are writing it on a piece of paper. So let's write j 3 times, and they would go D, G, E spells j, D, G, E spells j, D, G, E spells j. Okay? We're gonna stop now and practice.